Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, dig through them, and plot the key insights for you. Today, we're looking at something pretty huge, the future. Specifically, the really amazing growth of the global 5G market. And we've got some great data for this, exclusive figures and projections from Cognitive Market Research. It covers 2021 right through to 2033. Our mission here is simple: give you a shortcut to understanding this massive tech shift. We'll pull out the important bits, the surprising facts, so you feel up to speed, without drowning in numbers. So let's start with the big picture, the global market, because these numbers, they're really something. In 2021, the market was valued at $5.311 billion.
Okay. Seems like a decent start.
Right. But then, jump just to 2025, it's expected to hit $19.6 billion.
A significant jump already.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. By 2033, the projection is a massive $266.908 billion.
Yeah, okay, that's huge.
It really is. And that represents a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 38.6%.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, a 38.6% Alario CAGR. That's not just steady progress. That's almost exponential growth we're talking about.
Exponential, right.
It suggests, that 5G isn't just seen as the next upgrade anymore. It's becoming fundamental.
Like a utility.
Pretty much, like electricity or water for the digital age. And that's what's setting the stage for this broader economic transformation. It goes way beyond just faster downloads on your phone.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's drill down into the regions. North America first. It seems like they're really pushing ahead.
They definitely are, setting a very fast pace.
So the market there started at about $2.087 billion back in 2021. By 2033, it's projected to surge to, wait for it, $98.489 billion.
Almost $100 billion. That's incredible for one region.
Yeah, with a strong CGR too, almost 38%, 37.91% to be exact. And inside North America, well, the U.S. is the big driver, no surprise there, heading towards over $64 billion by 2033.
Makes sense.
Canada's looking strong too, expected to pass $25 billion. Okay. But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Mexico.
Ah, yes. Tell me about Mexico.
Well, it started smaller, $21.59 billion in 2021, but it's projected to hit over $9 billion by 2033.
Okay, that's substantial growth from a smaller base.
Right, and that gives it the highest CAGR in the region, 40.314%.
Over 40%. Wow.
So how significant is that for a market like Mexico? What could be driving that kind of acceleration compared to the U.S. or Canada?
That high rate for Mexico is very significant, yeah. It often points to a few things coming together. Maybe a younger population really hungry for digital tech.
Okay.
Plus, you might have aggressive competition between the telecom companies pushing out the infrastructure faster.
Right, driving deployment.
Exactly. And maybe even government programs or, foreign investment aimed at getting industries digitized. Mexico might be sort of leapfrogging older tech straight to 5G.
That makes sense. Skipping a step, basically.
Precisely. Yeah. And that can lead to these really explosive growth figures.
Okay, fascinating. Let's cross the Atlantic now to Europe. It's also showing some interesting varied growth.
Right. A different picture, but still very strong growth overall.
The region as a whole, it started at just over $1 billion in 2021, $1.062 billion, and it's set to grow to over $50 billion by 2033. The CAGR is also nearly 38% there.
So very similar overall growth rate to North America, interestingly.
Yeah, it is. Now, looking at the specific countries, the UK seems to be leading the pack, projected to hit almost $10 billion.
Okay.
Germany's not far behind, nearing $8.2 billion. Then you've got France, Italy, Spain, all looking strong, expected to cross $5 billion each.
So broad adoption across the major economies?
Definitely. But, what really jumped out at me in the European data was the rest of Europe category.
Ah, the collective other. What about them?
Well, they started really small, just $0.056 billion combined in 2021.
Okay, tiny base.
Tiny. But they're projected to jump to over $3.7 billion by 2033.
Wow, that's a huge multiplier.
It is. And it gives that segment the region's highest CAGR, 41.636%.
Over 41%. That raises an important question, doesn't it?
Yeah, like what's driving that? It's a diverse group of often smaller countries.
Exactly. It suggests that maybe beyond just the big names, there's this widespread readiness for 5G.
Like a baseline demand.
Yeah, maybe driven by EU-wide regulations making things easier, or businesses investing across borders, or maybe even specific industries in those smaller countries are jumping on 5G early, things like smart factories or, advanced farming tech.
Interesting. So it's a collective surge.
It appears so. A broad push across many markets adding up.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Asia Pacific. This region looks like it's becoming a a dominant hub for 5G.
Absolutely. The numbers there are really defining the global scale.
Started at about $1.5 billion in 2021,
Right.
set to hit over $83.5 billion by 2033. And look at the CGR, almost 40%, 39.749%.
The highest regional CGR we've seen so far, I believe.
It is. And within APAC, well, China's just a powerhouse, no other way to put it.
Predictably, yes.
Going from $500 million in 2021 to over $33 billion by 2033.
Just massive scale.
Massive. Japan's also showing big growth, nearing $15 billion. South Korea, Australia, Singapore, all steady growers.
Right, the established tech leaders.
Yeah, but the real standout, the country with the highest single-country CAGR in this whole report.
India.
India. Yes, what are the numbers there?
Get this. Started at just $0.167 billion in 2021. Expected to leap to $11.195 billion by 2033.
Okay, wow. That's almost a 70-fold increase.
Exactly. And the CAGR is nearly 42%. 41.988%. That's just eye-popping.
It really is. India's growth story is often remarkable.
So what's driving that kind of explosive growth there? Any unique factors?
Well, it's usually a potent mix in India. You've got this huge market, much of it's still coming online, rapidly digitizing.
Yeah, the massive potential user base.
Huge. Plus strong government pushes, like the Digital India Initiative, pouring money into infrastructure.
And then there's fierce competition among the mobile operators, pushing prices down and rolling out networks fast. A very tech-savvy population eager for new services.
A perfect storm for adoption.
Kind of, yeah, especially as 5G starts reaching beyond the big cities. It's connecting millions for the first time with high speeds.
Incredible potential. Okay, next stop, South America, another region really on the rise.
Showing strong growth potential, too.
Their market is projected to go from about $0.3 billion in 2021 to over $16.5 billion by 2033. CGR is almost 39%.
So, again, that consistent high 30s growth rate popping up?
It is, and within South America, Brazil is the clear giant, expected to reach over $7.5 billion itself.
Dominating the regional market share.
Yeah. But we also see really healthy growth rates between 38 and 41% CAGR for places like Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile.
So widespread adoption there, too, not just Brazil.
Seems like it. A broad recognition of 5G's importance across the continent.
Good to see.
Okay, finally, let's touch on the Middle East and Africa. Two regions often described as having, immense untapped potential.
Definitely. Let's start with the Middle East.
Right. Their 5G revenues are set to really take off. From $0.2 billion in 2021 to nearly $11 billion by 2033.
It's another big jump.
Yeah, growing at almost a 39.5% CAGR. Saudi Arabia is leading that, going from $80 million to over $4.6 billion.
Well, wow. Saudi Arabia is making a huge push.
Seems like it. Followed by Turkey, the UAE, Egypt, Qatar, all showing strong investment.
Okay. And Africa?
Africa.
Huh.
Yeah, the report highlights its immense promise. Starting smaller, $4.138 billion in 2021.
Right. From a lower base.
But projected to grow to almost $7 billion by 2033. The CAGR is strong there too, nearly 38%.
So catching up quickly.
It looks like it. Places like Nigeria, South Africa, and the rest of the continent collectively are showing healthy adoption rates. It signals they're getting ready for 5G infrastructure.
Which could be huge for economic development and bridging that digital divide.
Absolutely. So, okay. We've thrown a lot of numbers around. Billions here, billions there, KGRs everywhere.
Laughs slightly. Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
But let's connect the dots. What does all this really mean for you listening right now, beyond just, faster streaming or whatever?
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, like the source says, this isn't just a telecom upgrade story. It's framed as a global economic revolution.
A revolution. Strong words.
They are, but the potential impact backs it up. These numbers matter because 5G is set to fundamentally change entire industries.
How so? Give us some examples.
Well, think about its super low latency, the tiny delay. That enables things like real-time remote surgery.
Wow, okay.
Or precision control of robots in smart factories where timing is critical. Or think about its ability to connect millions, even billions of devices simultaneously.
The Internet of Things, IoT.
Exactly. That's the backbone for truly smart cities. Managing traffic flow intelligently, optimizing energy grids, enabling autonomous cars that talk to each other and the roads.
Okay, so it's infrastructure for a whole new way of living and working.
Precisely. It's reshaping how businesses run, how public services work, and, how our daily lives will function in a world that's just much more connected.
It really is incredible when you step back and think about it. Going from just over $5 billion in 2021
Hmm.
to a projected $266 billion in what, just 12
Yeah,
years?
just over a decade.
The scale, the speed of this 5G expansion,
Huh?
it's truly mind-boggling. It's not just growth. It feels like you said, a foundational shift.
It absolutely does.
So as we wrap up, here's something for you to think about. We've talked about transforming industries we know, enabling smart cities,
Hmm.
but looking ahead, what completely new things, applications, aspects of life we can't even properly imagine right now might become totally dependent on this ubiquitous 5G connectivity in the years to come? What's the next revolution it enables? Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're getting into something that's, well, changing everything around us, the global 5G market.
That's right.
And we want to look at its core dynamics.
Hmm.
Because this isn't just, faster phones.
Not at all.
It really feels like 5G is set to redefine connectivity, communication, whole industries even. So the question for you listening is, what's 5G really about beyond just that speed boost? And why do people keep calling it a revolution?
Yeah, that's exactly the right way to frame it. The sources we've looked at give us a really clear picture. And to get our heads around the scale of 5G, we're basically going to break it down into three main areas.
Okay.
First, we'll dig into the powerful drivers pushing it forward. Then we'll look at the significant hurdles slowing things down a bit. And finally, we'll touch on the really exciting new trends that are shaping where 5G is going next.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start with those drivers. What's really pushing this revolution forward? Why is 5G becoming like a necessity now, not just a nice to have?
Well, what the sources really highlight is that the core driver isn't just about making things faster, although it does that. It's really about unlocking capabilities that were literally impossible before.
Impossible how?
So at the heart of it is this huge growing demand for genuinely high-speed connectivity, but also crucially, ultra-low latency.
Low latency meaning
Liz?
less delay.
Exactly, minimal delay. Think about things like autonomous vehicles. They need information in, well, fractions of a second to operate safely.
Right. Can't have lag there.
Absolutely not. Or telehealth, especially things like remote surgery. You need incredibly stable, responsive connections, no question. Smart factories, too, they rely on pinpoint precision and immediate feedback loops for automation.
Hmm.
And then you've got immersive gaming, or VR, which just chew through data. Any lag totally ruins the experience.
Right.
And 5G's core features, that low latency and high throughput, they're basically essential building blocks for all these next-gen digital platforms.
We usually think of tech being driven purely by market demand by companies. But our sources suggest there's another really powerful player involved here, maybe a surprising one.
Yeah, that's where governments step in. It's actually fascinating to see the scale of it.
How so?
Well, globally, governments are pouring billions, truly billions, into building out the infrastructure. They're also creating policies specifically designed to encourage 5G and running these strategic spectrum auctions to get the airwaves allocated.
So they're actively smoothing the path.
Very actively. And beyond just funding and policy, we're seeing lots of public-private partnerships. These are specifically aimed at speeding up deployment in key sectors, things like defense, smart city development, transportation networks,
Right.
and all this government backing. It's a huge catalyst. It definitely encourages service providers and big companies to jump in and adopt the tech more widely.
Okay, so we have massive demand, strong government support. What else is fueling this? Our sources mentioned something about the sheer number of devices getting connected. It feels like everything's getting smart.
Oh, it absolutely is. That's the third big driver, the explosion of IoT, Internet of Things devices and smart technologies. We're talking billions upon billions of connected devices coming online, everything from, smart speakers and thermostats in your home.
Yeah, my toaster will probably be on 5G soon.
Maybe. But also wearables and really sophisticated sensors used for predictive analytics in factories. And 5G networks, they offer that critical ability to scale, to handle this massive number of connections reliably and with speed.
And that translates into what?
Real-world efficiencies. Think industrial automation getting smoother, being able to monitor remote equipment in real time, or using predictive maintenance to fix things before they break. It basically makes industries much more agile and efficient.
Okay, so the momentum seems huge, but like any major shift, there've got to be roadblocks. The path isn't always smooth, right? So what are the big hurdles 5G is facing right now?
Yeah, definitely not smooth sailing everywhere. One of the biggest, most immediate restraints is simply the cost. The infrastructure and deployment cost is, well, enormous.
Enormous how? What are we talking about?
Building out these dense 5G networks requires huge capital investment. You need advanced base stations, sure, but also tons of these small cells.
Small cells.
Yeah, they're like mini antennas, low power, but you need a lot of them close together to guarantee that consistent high-speed coverage, especially in dense urban areas or even inside large buildings. Plus, you need the fiber optic cables to connect everything. It all adds up.
And that cost, where does it hit hardest?
That's the tricky part. This financial burden is especially tough for rural areas or regions that are economically weaker. The potential return on investment just might not seem worth the massive upfront spend for the telecom companies.
I see.
And what's really concerning here is how this links geography and economics. It could actually widen the digital divide between areas.
Right, making it harder for smaller players or less populated areas to keep up.
Exactly. It slows down the overall deployment and definitely limits the market reach, especially for the smaller telcos.
So that's a massive infrastructure challenge. But even if the network gets built out, what about us, the users? Is there a hurdle around devices and just getting people ready for 5G?
There absolutely is. That's another significant point. Despite all the hype, a very large number of people are still using older 4G phones and devices.
And upgrading isn't cheap.
Precisely. Getting a new 5G-compatible smartphone often comes with a pretty hefty price tag. That's a real barrier for a lot of consumers. And layered on top of that, in many parts of the world, there just isn't widespread access yet to affordable 5G-ready hardware. So yeah, it definitely slows down mainstream adoption by everyday consumers.
Okay, cost, devices.
Yeah.
What about security? In a world that's increasingly digital, putting something like 5G at the foundation must raise some big questions.
Oh, absolutely. That's the third critical obstacle, security and regulatory concerns. And this gets more complex as 5G becomes truly foundational for, mission critical stuff.
Like what?
Everything from national defense systems to remote healthcare delivery, the stakes get really high. Our sources point to specific potential vulnerabilities, things like network slicing.
Can you explain that quickly?
Sure. Network slicing is basically creating multiple virtual networks on top of the same physical 5G infrastructure. So you could have one slice dedicated to, say, emergency services, another for a smart factory, another for general mobile broadband.
Okay, sounds useful, but vulnerable.
Potentially. While it allows customization and isolation, each slice could theoretically represent a different potential attack surface if not secured properly. Then you add in the vulnerabilities from those billions of IoT devices we talked about. Each one could be a potential entry point for hackers.
Wow.
And then there's the whole complexity of data. How is it governed when it crosses borders on these global networks? It really raises fundamental questions about trust, about global cooperation.
So without clear rules.
Without globally agreed upon standards and, frankly, clear, harmonized regulations, you naturally see caution, especially in sensitive industries. They're hesitant to fully jump in.
Right, that makes sense. So these are some pretty significant hurdles. But despite all that, innovation doesn't just stop, does it? Let's shift gears and look at the future. What are some of the fascinating trends shaping how 5G is evolving?
Definitely. And one of the biggest trends emerging is the role of artificial intelligence, AI, within the 5G ecosystem itself. It's becoming a real game changer.
AI helping run the network.
Exactly. AI is being deployed now for really sophisticated tasks like managing network traffic flow dynamically, predicting potential equipment failures for maintenance, and generally optimizing how efficiently the network operates, often in real time.
So the network gets smarter on its own.
Pretty much. As telecom companies rely more on smart automation, these AI-integrated 5G networks are paving the way for potentially fully autonomous network operations down the line. Think intelligent data routing, services that adapt automatically to demand. It makes the networks themselves far more robust and resilient.
That's really interesting. Okay, what else? Another trend our sources highlighted was this push towards private 5G networks. What's that about? Who's building them and why?
Yeah, this is a really strong trend, especially in certain sectors. Think big manufacturing plants, huge logistics operations, energy companies, and utilities.
Why them specifically?
Because these private networks offer something the public networks can't always guarantee. A highly secure, super fast, and completely customizable wireless environment that's tailored exactly to their specific operational needs.
So more control.
Total control, basically. It empowers those critical applications that need absolute reliability. Think controlling robots on a factory floor, running autonomous vehicles within a warehouse complex, or tracking valuable assets in real time across a large site.
I see. So connecting this to the bigger picture, it's about giving companies direct oversight of their own critical wireless infrastructure.
Exactly. It lets them innovate faster and more securely within their own operational bubble, you could say.
Okay, one more trend that sounds really transformative,
Yeah.
edge computing, bringing the data closer to us.
That's the essence of it. Edge computing, combined with 5G, is all about reducing that delay, that lag, by processing data much closer to where it's generated or needed instead of sending it all the way to a centralized cloud and back.
And the benefit is?
Speed mainly, but also efficiency. By localizing the computation, 5G-enabled edge services make things like real-time data analytics truly instant. It makes augmented reality and virtual reality applications much smoother and more responsive.
Right.
And generally, it makes these deeply immersive consumer experiences not just technically possible, but actually accessible and scalable in a way they weren't before. It really changes where the thinking happens in the network.
Fascinating. So we've covered the drivers pushing 5G, the hurdles holding it back, and these really cool emerging trends. Bringing it all together, what does this really mean for you, our listener, and the world around us?
Well, to sum it up, the 5G market clearly has tremendous momentum behind it. It's being pushed hard by genuine innovation, significant government backing, and really strong demand from businesses needing its unique capabilities. But yeah, the path forward isn't completely clear. Those challenges we discussed, the high costs, the device compatibility issues, the complex security and regulatory landscape, they're very real. Overcoming them is going to require sustained effort, real focus, and probably a lot more collaboration across different industries and even between countries.
And for you listening, it's worth realizing that 5G's path shaped by these drivers, hurdles, and trends, it directly influences your future. How you'll connect, how you'll work, how you'll be entertained. It's changing the foundations of our digital lives.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, and consider that balance. The balance between pushing the technology forward as fast as possible and the need for careful, coordinated global standards and regulations. How we strike that balance will ultimately decide how quickly, and perhaps more importantly, how fairly 5G gets adopted around the world. What could that mean for different regions, different industries? Who benefits most and who might get left behind? Something to think about.